Welcome to the Flex Rental Solutions webinar. Today we're going to be talking about custom fields, and specifically custom fields and how we can apply them to inventory models and serial units as well. In the past we've talked about how you can apply custom fields to your contacts. And again, that was just being able to put custom tabs into the contact field. Or into the contact entry, and then be able to put whatever fields you want onto that tab. You can do the same thing for your inventory models. Let's go to the System Settings menu and click Custom Fields. I have one that I was testing earlier. And let me just so we're not using that for a second. So right now, the first thing that you'll notice in the custom fields section is that we have these PX or Production Exchange ones that are set up by default. Recently, Production Exchange informed us that they are no longer operating, so these are more or less useless in your Flex system. If you were using Production Exchange in the past, then you probably got that same notification that Production Exchange is no longer operating, but for the rest of you, just so you know, that's what this PX option means, and we are planning on removing it from the Flex interface in the future. Now to set up a new custom field, we would just go over here to the new custom field and then enter the information here. Since I already have one set up, I'm just going to go to the one that we have set up and just modify that information. So the first thing that you notice is that you will choose a type as you're creating a new custom field. I'm choosing resource. And then after you've created it, then that will not be editable. So you'll notice that I can't change that now after I've created the custom field. The caption is going to be basically what the field is going to say. Let's actually start by going down to the resource options, because this will kind of work from the top down. The group name is actually going to be the name of the tab that will appear. So for example, let's just say that we're setting up a new tab for our inventory models that's just called something like General Info. And I'll let you decide exactly what kind of custom fields and custom tabs you're setting up in your system. But for this one, let's just say it's General Info. I'm going to apply it to inventory. Let's click Update just so that saves. And then the caption are the options that will appear within the tab. So let me just show you what that looks like so far. If we go back to our inventory model, then you can see I have a new tab that's called General Info, that's matching the group name that I set up in this custom field. And right now the field is just some random nonsense, but we'll fix that right now. And so let's think of a few things that you might want to put in the General Info tab of an inventory model. I can't think of many off the top of my head. I can think of more examples that would go into the serial unit tab. A lot of these things we've actually included, like for example, people used to create a custom field for the bin location or the warehouse location of this item, but we've now included that by default. Same with some model information. You can now include that in your serial units as well. But if there's anything that you want to include in just some general information that we don't already have available to you in the inventory model, then you can set that up here. And let's look at the different types of fields that you can put into this tab. So for example, you could just have a general text area. And let me show you what this looks like. There's some good examples over there in the chat room, power requirements, available connections, etc. And again, those can be things that are general to this inventory model. So every single one of these would include those same requirements, available connections, etc. As you can see, when I set up a text area, this is the field that you get. It's a large text area. It can be resized if you want, and you can just type whatever you want into this text area. We could also set up what we call just a free text. And this would be something more like, and let's use the example that we had in the chat room. The free text field is just going to be a smaller text field. So you just don't, if you don't need a full description, if you're just doing 1 or 2 words, then you could use the free text field to just have a quick little text field there. Another option that you could use is an option list. So let's say that you have 5 different types of power requirements. You could create an option list for that. And these are just a few that I created earlier. Let's delete those real quick. I don't know the exact options that I would put here, but I would just say this is power option 1. I would choose it as an option list, then click add. I could do power option 2. Again, keep it as option list and click add. So you can add as many options as you want to this option list. When you're done, you can just click close, then update. And now when I go back and we'll reload the general info tab, I might have to do a full reload. Now I have a list that I could choose from. So I would just choose which one it is, click update. If I need to change that, I would just change, click update. So that's how you can create an option list. Oh, I don't want the new. And a couple of the other options that you can put in here. You can have the Boolean, which is essentially just a yes or no. So if I had some sort of option that said, is this compatible with something? Now that custom field will be just a yes or no option. And then you can also use, for example, a contact or a date and time. A lot of these other ones aren't necessarily applicable to your inventory model custom fields, so you won't be able to use them. But you could probably go through and try a couple of these and see if they work for you. But the main ones are going to be your text area, which again is the large text area. Your option list, which if you choose, then you would also go to click Manage Options, where you can put as many options as you want, and you would choose those from a drop-down list. Then you have your free text, which is just a small text field, a date and time, a contact, or a Boolean, which is just the yes or no option. The question in the chat room is, can you have multiple fields per tab? And yes, you can. You will have to create a new custom field for each new field that you want, and you would use the same group name. So let's show how to do that. Let's just keep this as a compatible with and as a yes or no Boolean. But if I want to put something else into that general info tab, I would go to new custom field. Make sure the name is exactly the same. So my group name is general info. My resource class is going to be inventory. And then for this one, let's say, let's use the option list. So we could do the power requirement, choose options list. And this one, since it's a new custom field, I have to set up new options. So let's just add a couple. I think we were pretty thorough in how we added it last time. and then let's click create. And so now what should happen, again, because I have the same group name here, if I go to reload and go back to my general info, then it will show any of the fields that I've created that belong to this general info group name. So I could very well have 10, 20, 30 of these on my general info tab. So as many as you can think of, you can put on that tab, and you can, of course, call the tab whatever you want. It doesn't have to be called general info. If I just want this to be called something like inventory information, or... And notice what will happen since I'm changing only this one, then I'm going to have a general info and an inventory information tab. But if I go and change my power requirement to inventory information as well, then since I'm using the same name, it will just put it into the same tab now. Let's now look at how we can set up a custom field for a serial unit. So let's actually click into one of my serial units for this Apple MacBook item. Typically, you're only going to have maintenance log, scan log, and out of commission as available tabs in a serial unit. And if it's a container, then you'll have the contents tab as well. But you can also set up specific information through custom fields for that serial unit. So for example, let's say, again, let's just call this a general info, but of course you can call it whatever you want. And then a resource class, I'm going to choose serial number. So this will only apply this tab to serial units. Again, I'll choose resource as the type. Let's say for the caption, maybe some of the info that I want to know about my inventory models is firmware version or something like that. And here I could either do an option list or a free text. I would say probably do a free text, because if you do an option list, what's going to happen here is this is going to create a general info tab with a firmware version field for every single serial unit in your system. So that could be computers, it could be speakers, it could be truss, it could be staging, projectors, etc. So if you have an option list, then you would want to put the option for any single type of inventory item that you have. Whereas a free text, you could just type it in and it would be a lot easier. A couple things we didn't look at yet are the permission. This is just going to take one of the general permissions from your system and say if a user has this permission granted, then they will be able to see this field. So for example, if I only want somebody who is a system administrator to be able to see this field, then I would choose permission system administrator, and anyone that has system administrator as granted in their permission structure would be able to see this. If you keep it as none, then anybody in your system will be able to see it with no restriction. And the field ID is just an optional, it's kind of like the code that you'll set up when you're creating new things in Flex. So I could just call it something like firm version or something like that. Okay, so we already have that set up. Let's click create. And now if we go to a serial unit and reload, now you can see that I have that tab on my serial unit, and I could enter that information here. Whatever firmware versions might be for a MacBook Pro. So other things that you could put as specific or general info about this specific unit. Maybe you want to show, first let's set up the tab information. So maybe for the specific unit, you'll also want to show the software. version. And again, you could probably just do free text on that. So now if we go back to that serial unit and reload and look at the general info, then we have fields for both. Another thing that I've seen some people set up is a custom field to say, like for example, if you have specific units that are being used by somebody in your company, like maybe in their workbox or something like that, then you can say something like who has it or something like this, or in workbox, and then set it up as a contact. So again, I want to put this in the same tab, so let's just call it general info, serial number. Then I can go and actually say whose workbox is this item in right now. So again, there's a lot of different options that you could create. If you have an option list, you could create that. A full text area if you want to create that. The Boolean yes or no, date and time, etc. So those are just a few of the options and ideas that you can do to set up either specific custom fields for a serial unit or specific custom fields for an inventory model. And again, the way to differentiate between those, let me reload these so it will show all the ones we just created. The way to differentiate between those is if you want it to appear on the inventory model page, then what you would do is assign that to the resource type of inventory. And if you want it to only appear on a serial unit page, then you would assign that to the serial number resource type. And again, if you want multiple fields to appear on the same tab, then you'll just make sure that that field belongs to a group name, and you would use the same group name for each field. If you have any questions about creating custom fields for your inventory models and serial units, then please email support@flexrentalsolutions.com.